Listen here, okay? When the man who in part made the Western sits you down and he says to you that you don't actually know how the real stories would have gone, you bet your ass that you're going to sit down and listen up. Well, I heard you was saying I don't look like no meaner than hell, cold-blooded damn killer. And maybe I ain't. But Uncle K here knows I was the meanest goddamn son of a bitch alive. And if he ever wanted a partner for a killing, or perhaps a podcast, he knew I were the worst one. That is to say, meaning the best, on account as I'm cold as the snow, and don't have no weak nerve nor fear when it comes to talking about them films what really touch my heart and soul. He also know I got the greatest taste in cinema this side of the Mississippi River, even if I ain't seen as many classics as he, because of my youth. Oh, sorry, hold on. It says here on your bounty poster, you're younger than me? Well, in any case, it don't seem real. It don't seem real how I ain't ever gonna look at Westerns the same way again, ever. Not now my eyes been opened, all on account of a film recommendation from a partner. It's a hell of a thing, changing a man's view on a mythology. Take away all he's got and all he's ever gonna have. But I guess I had it coming. Just like we all got it coming, kid. Kay, introduce yourself to these fine people. It's a great movie.
Great movie.
It is a great movie.
It is a great movie. That's right. I'm Kay, and I've done podcasts of every one kind or another.
Have you?
And I'm here to do a podcast
There's a wide
with you.
list.
Hey, there's a lot that weren't posted. There's a lot that never made the cut.
Yes.
But nonetheless, we are here.
We have arrived.
And we are queer.
And it's great to be here with you once again.
It is a pleasure, my friend, an absolute pleasure to talk about one goddamn hell of a movie.
Yes, which I'm really excited to get into. But just quickly a reminder to viewers that you can find One With The Films on your podcasting platforms of choice, as well as live and on demand right here on YouTube. And if you are in the live chat, please feel free to join in the conversation, as we always love to hear from you. And if you're listening on demand, don't worry. We still love you, but, you know, as always, just a teeny bit less. But Kay, do you want to tell us a little bit about what we're doing here today?
Oh, I would love to. Well, the weekly watch list is what happens when a bunch of friends with unique and wonderful taste in films have tried too hard for too long to finally share and discuss their favorite films with one another. And if you've been around a while, you already know the shtick. However, for the uninitiated, the idea is that for every episode, at least one person watching is watching the chosen film for the first time. It's all about having a space for creators to share the art that matters most to them and give them a platform to show us all why. So if you like listening to a bunch of nerds geek out and force each other to watch and discuss their favorite films for the very first time, feel free to follow and subscribe. Send us your friends, and send us to your friends, and send your friends to us. It's all kosher. And if you like, you can also activate notifications so you never miss a new episode. And of course, we're on all your favorite socials too. Links are in the description below.
Hell yeah, baby. So
yeah,
we were saying, so I always find episodes like this really interesting because whenever I watch a new movie, the first person that I want to talk to about it is you, right? And so the problem when we have a podcast and I'm watching a film that you've recommended is that I need to talk to you about it, and we kind of can't talk because that's the first thing that's going to come up. So it's been fun avoiding you. But that being said, why don't you hit me real quick, Kay? Quick draw from the hip. What is a brilliant film that not enough people have seen?
Bam! Well, it is Unforgiven, 1992, Clint Eastwood director. It is, what a movie. What a fucking movie.
Yeah, it's okay at best, yeah. And can you tell me in one sentence why you chose this film specifically?
It's going to be a run-on, as they often are.
You get 10 words, no more, no less.
No,
I'm counting.
Can't make me count. So,
that's one.
Master in the art form tries to break it. That's me trying to do it under 10 words.
You had 9. I was waiting for you to do one more and just add like a fuck at the end of something.
Fuck.
Yeah. I love to hear it. It sounds really cool. It's a great elevator pitch. And I'm curious as to how you found your way to this film originally.
Sure. Absolutely. So this is a shout out to my dad and to my grandfather and to like generally my dad's side of the family. My uncle and my dad and my granddad, all huge Clint Eastwood fans. Like it kind of just was their family kind of thing there. My granddad even reminds me a little bit of Clint Eastwood and how he talks and how he like kind of goes about shit.
Yeah.
And
we've talked ad nauseum about how you have this like weird cowboy undertone to you as well that you just can't seem to shake.
That is correct. Yeah, it is
like
definitely
the persona of you that
in
interacts with like random people you're not friends with.
I can't shake it.
For those of you who don't know, Kay will just be like normal American, and then we'll go through a drive-thru and be like, "Howdy, partner, I'll get a Big Mac," and he doesn't even realize he does it. He doesn't even realize it's actually wonderful to watch. Or I'll be on the phone to him when he goes to order Chipotle later today.
My weird, the way I put it is my customer service voice turns into a weird, like, it's Clint Eastwood. It goes, now, do you want your toadstool burger with,
like cigar?
Exactly. But to answer your question, basically my dad, and I remember when I was younger, like when I was like getting into movies and things like that, I would hear my uncle and my dad, they talk about this movie, and they would also talk about more importantly, kind of they would talk about Clint Eastwood, they would talk about this stuff, and I remember them starting to talk about Unforgiven, but it kind of was held, and my dad would talk about it like there's a certain level to Unforgiven that you just watching it by itself, you don't it's a great movie by itself, but you don't really appreciate what this movie did if you don't understand Westerns, if you don't understand what Westerns, like the history of Westerns. Because I mean, even now, and I can attest to, like, it was just, so I remember hearing about it from him and from them at that time. And I thought that was really interesting that a film, I think it was kind of one of the first times hearing people talk about a film within the context of having to have seen other movies.
Like something that was quite meta.
Like something that was meta, but not. Like something that wasn't like meta as in it was trying to deliberately tell you this and be meta, but something that without the context may not give you as much appreciation for it as
well,
it did.
It does make a lot of sense because you sent me on a bit of a mission prior to this. If any keen-eyed or eared listeners would remember from last week, we were saying that, yes, Unforgiven is the film of the week, but there's probably quite a few other things we have to check out as well. And in preparation for this week, I watched the entire Man with No Name trilogy. So that's Fistful of Dollars, For a Few Dollars More, and Good, Bad, and the Ugly. And then I watched Unforgiven. There were a couple more that I had prepped to watch as well that were available to me, which were, I think I'm still going to watch. It's Outlaw Josie Wild, was it?
Josie Wales. That's the first one that Clint Eastwood actually directed as a Western.
Okay, cool. Yeah. All right. So I wanted to check that out. And then there was a couple of other ones as well. Some more Sergio Leone ones, and some other directors had taken a couple too. So I got about 3 more I want to check out. It's funny, every year I kind of end up in like these weird spirals of things that I end up exploring. And it was really fun last year to do heaps of like Asian and East Asian like martial arts films. So I saw lots of stuff from like the Philippines, and I saw some like Thai martial arts films, and then heaps of Chinese stuff and heaps of Japanese stuff. Like it was a mess. Jim Nalbus ruined me. Sent me on a exploration. I couldn't stop.
That was kind of where the sending Nath on a journey came from, was that one being like, well, knowing how far he went into, there we are. Like knowing how far he went with that one, my theory was to give him another journey like that, give into an art form that I knew you had obviously seen a ton of modern Westerns, but it was more from what we'll talk about. it's very clear how much this film influenced them.
Oh yeah, yeah. We've been talking over the last couple of weeks as well about how this is one of those kinds of films that like it's quite common now that people are trying to do this. You were telling me how like Logan took a lot of inspiration from Unforgiven, and I see it now, and also not just in the sense of like the story itself, but also in what it was trying to do. Right? It is taking this idea or this concept, the X-Men that are a little bit like silly, a little bit wacky, a little bit more like popcorn flick, and trying to make it like remove the mythology from it and make it something that feels real and digestible as a story of like this could have actually happened. And it is.
I mean, even to the point of in X-Men, in Logan being the comic book that they talk about, almost the same thing as in Unforgiven, them talking about the Duck of Death.
Yeah, yeah. And
but before we get too far down that line, finish your thought.
Well, yeah, I was just going to say that. Like, I do love that a lot of the like storytelling devices they used in here to kind of get those points across, which I'm really excited to get into as well.
Oh, but so excited.
You have put some fun facts together as well. Do you want to fill me in a little bit on this film?
Of course. Let's talk about it. All right. So, Unforgiven was released in 1992, 7 years after Clint Eastwood's last Western at the time. It was produced and directed by Clint Eastwood, written by David Peoples, starring Clint Eastwood, Morgan Freeman, Gene Hackman, Richard Harris, Francis Fisher, and Anna Thompson. Edited by Joel Cox, cinematography by Jack N. Green, and was made with a 90s budget of $14.4 million, which we did the math and found out that it came into nearly 1.5 Hell or High Waters.
Nice.
And which is about 35 some odd $1 million today. Nonetheless, it grossed nearly 11 times its budget with about $159 million worldwide. We did not adjust that for inflation. That is raw for the 90s. And so rated at 8.2 on IMDb, 96% certified motherfucking fresh on a critic score on Rotten Tomatoes with a 93% audience score, 4.2 on Letterboxd, and 8.3 on Metacritic. Nominated for Best Sound, Best Cinematography, Best Art Direction, and Best Actor in a Leading Role for Clint Eastwood. Best Original Screenplay, but it also won Best Supporting Actor for Gene Hackman, Best Editing, Best Director for Clint Eastwood, and Best Picture.
Whoa.
You might be surprised to know that this film, in the early 70s and early 80s, that Clint Eastwood's assistant actually read the script and gave it a scathing review, called it essentially trash, put it away for years. Clint Eastwood never read it for like 20 years. And at the time, the script was known as the Cut Whore Killings or the William Munny Killings. And eventually, Clint Eastwood was considering using the writer David Peoples on another project and wanted to read something that he had already written, read what would later be known as Unforgiven, and fell in love with it. He bought the script in the early 80s, knowing it would be his last Western, and waited until the 90s when he would be age appropriate for the part. But during that period of time when he hadn't read the script, in the early 1980s, Francis Ford Coppola got the script and met with John Malkovich to offer him the role of William Munny. Malkovich would later say he's glad that never happened. And Gene Hackman had at one time even been approached to direct the film while Eastwood wasn't interested. The film was the third Western to win Best Picture at the Oscars, following Chimeran of 1931 and Dances with Wolves in 1990. Eastwood dedicated this film to his directors and mentors, Sergio Leone and Don Siegel. The film was remade into a 2013 Japanese film, also titled Unforgiven, which stars Ken Watanabe and changes the setting to early Meiji era in Japan. I tried my best to find out how that was pronounced. I failed.
That's what that sounds.
Although the score was arranged by Leni Nyhaus, once again, this is not going well, but the main theme was written actually by Clint Eastwood of this film. Many funny stories come from this movie, including Richard Harris thinking that it was a prank when he was offered the role in the film because at the same time he was watching High Plains Drifter starring Clint Eastwood when Clint Eastwood gave him the call. And then Clint Eastwood also gave his mother a cameo in the film where she had to board a train in a very heavy period accurate costume that he eventually had to cut out of the movie.
Oh, no.
Eastwood has long asserted that this film would be his last traditional Western, concerned that any future projects would simply rehash previous plot lines or imitate someone else's work. And to this day, he has maintained this. This film is in the Cinematic Library or the National Archive as films that have meant a lot to the world and are deserve to be preserved. And yes, so those are the fun facts.
God damn, I love it. I'm adding a couple of films to my list to watch as well. Like I want to see this Japanese
Ken Watanabe.
Yeah, I reckon that'd be dope. And also those other what's it called, westerns that won the Academy Awards. So
I was telling you off mic, and now I'll say it on mic. That was the fact that surprised me the most, which it was, a film has reached the proportions when it's like, okay, it used to be Westerns stealing from Japanese films in order to do a new film, and it's kind of funny that they then took a Clint Eastwood movie and redid it in Japan.
Yeah,
like I'm like, I think that's full circle.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? Now, before we do go any further, guys, all these conversations aren't spoiler free, so we're not necessarily doing play-by-plays, but we're talking about the film with the expectation you've already seen it. It's always cool to go and watch the film and then check back later, but even if you haven't seen it, chances are we'll probably convince you to make the leap. So if you want to know what film to watch in advance, or really, this is the last episode of this season, so you don't really need to know what film to watch in advance, but next week we're going to be doing our sort of top 10, or next episode, I should say, doing a top 10 of 2024. So there's lots of movies for you to catch up on before then. Kay's done a good job of watching more than 5 films last year, so we're actually gonna have some stuff.
I did good.
That's great. Yeah, so links in the description, guys, for everything you need to see. But let's get right into it. Now, this film is carried by some intense themes.
Oh my god, yeah.
And there was some of those items that you texted me earlier of the main things that you wanted to talk about. These were the things that stood out, yeah, like obviously key themes in the film. Which, let me pull up the thing here as well. I loved the feeling of what's the word, like, as it kind of comes around to it's got this story of like what's it called, like mythology, right? Like it is very much playing on this idea of like, what you're getting into. And I think especially watching this like now today with all of these like John Wicks and like Equalizer and stuff like that, like the guy getting back into the game and what that's gonna be like, I think it's a really interesting tale to tell here.
Yeah. No, you're so right. Like the way that it begins and the way that this movie starts off, what I love about it, and we're going to get into this a little bit more with one of our later topics, but it's interesting. This film starts off obviously with this, wonderful shot of the oak tree, just this perfect, idyllic start, like rolling credits going up, talking about William Munny and that his wife has died. And then what do we cut to? We cut to this dark, which, keeping in mind, like, again, when Naf watching, like, and so there might be some spoilers for the Westerns that I was talking about, but it's like, when you compare what had been done before to what was happening now, typically even night scenes are very well lit. They're very much, you can see everything around you. It's not really dark. It just kind of is there.
There's this funny thing in the spaghetti Western where somebody's carrying like a candle around like this, right? And you watch them move the candle and you see a spotlight essentially move with the candle to where the lighting is like, like it's motivated lighting at the early ages, but it's kind of funny
but
to
it's
look
not,
at.
But it's not a lot. Like, but even then it's like the background is super well lit. Everything is that, like, there's like it's like the moon. They're like, it's the moonlight, and it's like, well, the moonlight's blowing out your entire background. So that's a powerful moon.
I think
but
sorry, go ahead.
But I guess what we're saying is, but in this film, we start on a pitch black night in a dark, dank saloon in a whorehouse. Like, this movie starts you off and it's like, this is already different. This is raw. This is really, it starts you off at just such this place. And as you said, like, I'm curious to know, with your experience with the themes, you've been on this journey with the Westerns that I got you into this, and then you're plopped into this movie. How did it differ for you in that first couple of I'm just curious your experience with watching this for the first time.
Yeah. So, for those who haven't watched any of the old spaghetti westerns, they all open with like title credits and music, and like it's bombastic and lots of gunshots, almost like a James Bond opening. Every one of those.
Yeah,
films.
That's a great way of putting it.
And it kind of sets you up, and you know what you're gonna get into. And even something like Good, Bad, and the Ugly, where I think there's no dialogue for the first like 10 minutes of the film, it's still it's going for something very unique in the kind of tone that it's setting up. And this is also doing the same sort of thing. So it is taking what probably Clint Eastwood's learnt over years of working on these films, but presenting it in a bit of a different way. Like we said, the opening of like the text crawl isn't something that's not been seen in a Western before. I think it was in the second or first film of the Man with No Name trilogy, where it straight up says, this is where the bounty hunters came up, and it's a lawless time and kind of thing, like, which is dope. But yeah, like that beautiful sunset shot of the grave digging, the text crawl, which is like very specific, it fills you in a lot, and kind of it tells you a lot about this character before you even meet him, like I feel like it's not shocking to see him later in the film and go, no, I believe him when he says he's changed and is this person.
Yeah,
she saved me. I think it's very clearly visible that he's not lying about that. But like we said, juxtaposing that with the opening in, as we said, the billiards room and the like attack, the horrifying attack of this unsuspecting like woman. Worker. Yeah. And then flipping that on its head with why it is that it's happened. Like it almost, I didn't expect that it would be this kind of serious, like, oh, okay, so this person's wife has passed away and okay, now he's going to figure out what to do. Okay, sure. To like, I'm going to like cut off her, like whatever, to she just saw his tiny dick and giggled. It's like, it's three very, very different beats very quickly, but they all tend to flow into one another like really well. No pun intended there. That was a gross laugh. No, but yeah, like I think the opening is so interesting because I also found like it basically cuts straight to like a sex scene and then runs from that to the like attack scene in the room next door. And this one kid just kind of like runs in and the guy's like, grab her, I'm going to cut her. And he's like, okay. And I'm like, what? What do you mean?
What?
It's like,
yeah.
I'm sorry, but like if I was anywhere in the world, okay, let's say that we were in that situation in Old Western, okay, and I hear you yelling and I run into the room next door and you go, hold her, I'm going to cut off like her eyes or her ears or whatever other body part. I'd be like, no. I'm not, I don't.
Yeah, like no.
I love you, but no.
But no,
we don't do this.
Is not a yes. I'm not yes-anding you here.
Yeah, this is an improv night on a Wednesday afternoon, dude. Like you are cutting someone's face.
Yeah, like, and I think that's also it, right? Like in so many of the other westerns, also it's like it's a gunshot or it's a quick like thing, and this one it's
awful.
Like it's bad. It's like it's so raw and. Again, just like, and then when they finally get it, and then the guy comes in with the shotgun, right, and puts it to the back of his head, and then to your point, like, just going with theme again. It's like what's so interesting is the way this movie begins. Little Bill comes in there with the bullwhip, and he doesn't whip him. Nothing happens to him.
I find him instead.
And I find him instead. Like
I think it's really telling too, though, that like comparing it to for a few dollars more. There's also a subplot with like the main villain has abused somebody, and it's played so differently, like so incredibly differently. And seeing it here, it's like it's obviously it's uncomfortable to watch. Like it as it always is. It just like you see the kind of silliness of the scene a little bit more in the in the older versions.
Yeah.
And one thing I thought was really interesting is that it was a scene that was actually cut for a few dollars more and then reintroduced as a character who is abused and then takes their own life in the middle of the abuse. And it's like they removed that for cinemas and then put it back in for, I guess, DVD release or not DVD, but probably VHS at the time.
Yeah. Well, and that's so interesting. And so I guess question to you, because you were thinking about theme and all this there. When it comes to theme for Unforgiven, like you really wanted to set this up, talking about theme. Where was your head at? Like what stuff? Like obviously, theme is the first thing you wanted to talk about. So tell me, like what was it? Let me in your brain.
Well, I guess the things that stood out to me a lot were like particularly around memory and how different people perceive different things or perceive the same stories, even down to like my uncle saw you take out these two guys and now I am coming to get the gunslinger and bring him with me. And he goes and gets his partner in Morgan Freeman. And he hears the story again. He's like, I remember 3 people actually. And it's a bit like, sorry. What? You already
Isn't that
like,
such a great moment? Because at first you're thinking it's the classic, like, oh man, I remember that being 1. How does he think it's 3? Like, and then being like
3 layers of it, right? Like,
yeah,
you have, oh, my uncle told me this story about you. And this is my like kind of, me whispering it back to you and kind of getting it wrong. You have the witness account. And the third part is, what do you remember? And him being like, I was always drunk. I don't remember anything about that time at all.
Yup.
It's like, oh, so like that concept of like memory. And you even play on a little bit later when we have the, he's got the fever and he has this kind of recurring, I see him with his head cracked open and there are worms in his face. And I see her and there are worms. And, I've seen the angel of death and it's got serpent eyes. And I was like, whoa.
This guy is going through it.
Oh,
like,
which
but also that's and like to your point, not to jump on your thing, but like what I love, I was just watching a video essay from The Take that did a wonderful breakdown of this. Like go check out their video on Unforgiven, it's incredible. But what they talk about was when you look at how Clint Eastwood introduces his own character in this movie, besides the opening shot, what's the first shot we really see of him?
It's falling in the mud.
It's falling in the mud with pigs. This is not the man with no name coming out with a cigarette saying, you better get 3 coffins ready. Yeah. Like, this isn't that. This is a guy who's trying to separate these pigs that have the fever from this, and it's not working.
Yeah.
This is a guy who can't get on his horse.
Yeah.
Like
it is like the opening of Logan a bit where it's like, you messed with Wolverine, he's gonna cut you, and then it's like, oh, he can't even get it up. Like,
yeah, exactly. Like that's truly the vibe. And again, as you're saying, like even with the theme of, but how does the kid perceive, and even to your point of theme of like the innocence of youth, right? Like here are 2, and even you can go to English Bob, Gene Hackman's character. You can see across all 4 characters, Ned, William, Little Bill, English Bob, all of them veteran gunslingers, but all of them are very different viewpoints on what it means to be a gunslinger. And then you have this kid who kind of is a lot like what, kids were told by the Western mythos was, oh, you're William Munny, kill these people out of Jersey. I'm the Schofield kid, right? I killed 5 people. I also love just one of my favorite scenes is just going, how many people you kill, kid? 5. How many? 5. And
one Mexican.
And one Mexican who come at me with a knife. And yeah, I thought that, I was like, huh? Like, it's so, but also again, just the weird stuff that they put in this movie. Like Clint Eastwood gets a cold. He gets a cold. He gets his ass beat. He can't get on his goddamn horse. The kid is nearsighted. The kid is like, it's all of this shit. Like Ned, it's the way I put Unforgiven is all of the scenes that are typically cut out of most Westerns. Like Unforgiven is every scene in between all of your favorite scenes.
Yeah.
Like, and because it's all about like, well, how do they get from town to town? How does this happen? Like, now they have to go over here and they have to go and do this. Well, they're searching for these guys. What about the other people that are over here doing this stuff? What about the other people that are coming into town to try to do this? And
yeah,
I don't know,
like,
man.
even
Like,
how the news evolves, you know, like by the time the kid gets
yes.
to Will Munny, the way he's explaining what happened versus we know
Oh, yeah.
we know what happened, you know. We're like that. Okay, I wasn't sure how it would actually go about. They didn't really bring it up again. You just kind of look at her and go, "You must have been the person that they cut up," you know. But it's like he looked at her and was like, "You still got your teats," you know. Like it's
yeah.
But one of the things that came up, I was thinking before when we were talking about the writing. Did you see what other films this writer wrote?
Blade Runner.
Like,
oh.
I mean, depending on which version of Blade Runner you watch, you either have brilliant writing or non-brilliant writing with voiceover. But obviously the key version is that. But one of the things that I thought was really interesting is there's this kind of Paul Atreides in Dune Part 1 sort of thing with the kid, where the boy must die for the man to rise kind of thing.
Yeah,
and I feel like the kid is taking that ideology with him, that like, I'm going to pretend that I've done this, and then I'll give myself the courage to do it. And when I do it, I'll feel like like a man, like I've grown up. But then
it'll be like, it'll give me bravado to the lie. Again, it's almost the English Bob. Like he wants to be like that English Bob kind of person where like Bob will lie because he also he has killed and doesn't really have a ton of remorse about it.
Yeah. And the setup of English Bob is so interesting too. For the way that he just disappears from the film, I was like,
right?
What? Like, it is toying with the expectation that you have knowing about like Westerns up to this point, you know? I think particularly, like in For a Few Dollars More, they introduce what's his name? Lee
Van Cleef.
Lee Van Cleef. They introduce his character. He's the opening character in the second film, and he carries it for the first like 25 minutes. Like, Man with No Name does not show up for like the first nearly half hour of the film. It's almost setting up that, and then he's just gone. And it's like, yeah, this probably is how it would have gone down. Like, he's a phony.
Yeah. Well, and to your point, it also is very interesting to set up the time period, right? Like, because it helps being like, yeah, the tensions between the Brits and the Americans, like, still probably a little tense, like having this guy coming in. And I think also it's one of those moments where it's like, you are unclear at the beginning with Little Bill. You're unclear if he's the villain.
Yes.
Right? Like, you don't, because this film also fucks with who's a hero and who's a villain so much to the point where they're indiscernible. Like, this film does gray. Like, to me, I think like something like Last of Us, right? I think borrowed a lot from Unforgiven, where Last of Us kind of has whose story are you telling? Because the mother of the kid that you just stabbed to save your life is going to hate you. Like, you are a villain in her eyes. Now, you would have died.
Yeah.
Like, it's that thing of being like, the story isn't. And I remember, because you were talking about like when I was a kid, one of the things that really struck me about this movie, and I think what's influenced me as a storyteller ever since, was that idea of perspective, right? Like, we want to move into the music, and I think I'm going to have a lot of bit easier time talking about some of these themes as we go forward with some of this stuff. But I think the music, this is a perfect transition into there, because the music of this movie, not to ADHD a little bit, but you and I talk a lot about Knives Out, like privately, and Knives Out, I think, does a brilliant thing with its music at the very beginning, because it starts off with this kind of very gothic, ethereal, but very kind of classic, cheesy, almost, like violins going like,
it's a whodunit, guys.
Like, exactly, like, but because it gives you that tone, it reframes the kind, like, even subconsciously, it reframes. There we go. How you're seeing the movie and how you're processing the movie. Similar to like Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, right? Like, you hear that music come on, and it's the wow, 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 and it's just him going, and he's like, you got room for one more, like, you know, sort of vibe.
Yeah,
it's that thing of like, when he does that, then you're like, okay, I know the tone I'm going for. Clint Eastwood opts for not just like one of the most beautiful, like melodic stuff, but turns it into a fucking horror movie. And goes with, this is scary. This is not good. This is not your heroic gunslinger coming in and doing this. It's the ominous, dark. Yeah, I want to know your thoughts on the music. Like,
you mentioned
let me in.
Yeah, because I hadn't actually considered the like kind of final scene in The Last of Us, that final action scene, as like a parallel to this, and it is like, because it is like, particularly in the TV show version, like when you're playing the game, you are very much like, I am saving her life. I need to do this. It doesn't matter. I'm getting there. But watching it in the show, where his face has no emotion in it at all, he's like a demon.
Yep.
Yeah, it's wild to see, you know, and watching Munny in this do the same thing, it is terrifying. And that's one of the things that I was thinking about the music here a lot, because it was particularly, as you were saying, the kind of expectation you get going into a Western. You expect certain kinds of music, and you don't have any of that. You don't have any of like the weird, like, you know, spring sound effects or a harmonica, or like it's a very soft and gentle flute. It's very melodic, as you said, and it evolves into these really interesting soundscapes that add a lot of gravitas to what's happening on the screen.
Yeah. And even to your point, like, there's also a lot of no music.
Yeah, which like, I think is something that's very classic Western, right? It is, you remove it when you need to remove it. It knows how to be silent.
And it is a thing of also this movie, but it's putting it at points that you wouldn't, like, for one example, there's no music over the first shooting. There's none.
Yeah.
It's just the sound of them panicking and a couple of occasional gunshots, and just hearing the guy pleading. This was very Last of Us to me, is like that moment of just hearing the kid being like, yeah, I got him through the gut, I think.
Yeah.
Like, and it's kind of going to the realistic, what it would be like in the Western, which is not just a bang, I know I got him. It's like, no, I think I got him through the gut. I'm pretty sure and he's going to bleed out, but they have to wait listening to him.
It's interesting thinking of that too, because there's a couple other things like I just clicked as well, that it reminded me a lot of Ozymandias and the shootout in Ozymandias, and especially, you know, like crawling behind the car to save myself, like that.
Yeah.
And you know, yeah, like Steve, is it Steve? Yeah, Steve.
Yeah, Gomez.
Yeah, like all of that. Like I didn't think of that until now, but yeah, it is interesting that it's that realistic look at what would have happened. And I think it's also hearing Little Bill talk about it, I think earlier in the film, where he goes, it's not the same thing shooting at someone who's shooting back at you. It unsettles you. It's not like a pew pew, you know, it's actually
it'll
like
rattle some folks.
That's and it's him going, it's those who stay calm and collected when somebody's shooting at them that win the shootout. It's not about who's faster, at all.
Well, and I love in that scene, like, and this kind of goes back to theme, right? Like, one of the themes that I think is so interesting, and we'll get to the meta part in a second, but I think that part of the themes that really resonated with this movie is, as you're talking about perspective, and it's talking about everybody talking about this, and it's, again, it is Clint Eastwood talking about the Westerns that he has been a part of, right? Like, his whole thing is saying, yeah, it's almost like when you watch those historian videos and they're like, well, yeah, but not realistic. Like, realistically, if you're on the beach and you're aiming up, that's not going to be a good position that you're going to want to be at. Like, it's good for a story, but not good for realistic. It's like, that's what they're talking about.
Yeah.
They're talking about that moment of him being like, well, realistically, again, one of my favorite moments is when he pulls out the gun. It's just that whole scene in that, like, in the jailhouse, right? Where in Gene Hackman, one of the fucking best exposition dialogue deliveries I've ever seen. Like, the writing was great. Like, the writing was really spot on to give him something. But Gene Hackman just gives you that feeling of the guy who's going to tell you a really good story. You know, like the guy who's
You're
going to
right.
sit
He
down.
does know how to deliver exposition really well, doesn't he? Like I've never,
Because that's all
thought of it.
exposition. He's
Yeah.
talking for a goddamn like 10 minutes, just being like, now old Bill over here was going to wait for Charlie to sit down. He's not going to wait for that. Like he's telling this whole story and he's like, oh yeah, man, I knew what actually happened. I like, I was there, or like, I knew these two guys. Like what I love about that moment is he talks about how like he gets up and he does the quick draw, right? And he mentions, he's like, now that is as fast as I can do it to like aim, shoot, and hit the thing I'm looking at. That's not a barn. And that's what he needs. And the guy's like, okay, but what if the guy's faster? And it's like, well, the guy's faster. Thing is, it's like you have to still aim. You have to still do this. It's that like that there are other factors that most times, as we've seen in most Westerns, it's just a pew, 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 like just a cool moment. And it's like, well, that's not really what is, I mean, even in the film, they're talking about wet powder in cartridges. They're talking about like, these are like that a gun can explode in a hand. Like it's the thing of all these little details that you just don't think about in most Westerns because they've never made you think about them.
I mean, even down to the last moment with the shotgun and the misfire, get him. It's like,
oh,
it's like,
God, I cannot wait to talk. I will talk all day about the ending, and that's why we left it to the end.
Yeah.
So I'm not but yes, continue.
Isn't that a feature that they built into Red Dead Redemption 2 as well, that your guns can jam?
I don't know. It might be in 1, but I think in Red Dead 2 they don't have that.
To, like, but I keep them clean and oil them and stuff. So
you do have to keep the. Actually, no, you're right. I think it does happen if they get rusted and they do things like that. Like I've always kept I'm too OCD about that shit, so I never had an experience when mine got all the way dirty. But yes, you're right. Like they do have those be. So if you don't keep your guns clean, they could like misfire. And Red Dead also very inspired by Unforgiven.
Yeah.
You know, especially Red Dead 2.
Yeah.
Like you gotta just sit like the same way you're going into Ghost of Tsushima, you gotta just lay into like that's your goal. End of 2025, finish Red Dead.
Oh God. I have so many other goals. I can't shove that one in there too.
Well, okay. Once we're done with
Red Dead
Helldivers.
Redemption 2 or Red Dead Redemption 3. Like, you know.
Okay, well, listen. We know our priorities. We know what we're gonna do. But anyway. But back to the point is like, I also think that like some of the. But I guess, do you want to talk more about the music? Do you have? Is there any other aspects that you?
Because it does blend pretty much directly into our next point, which is how this film redesigns the Western too. You know how it takes those concepts that we're so used to and presents them in a different way. You know, like I spent the last couple of days sending you pictures every like hour of like, look at this shot, look at this, like, and this film. Well, it's not to say that it has like bad cinematography or anything like that at all.
No, but it's not showy.
There are less iconic shots. You know, I sent you a shot, I think it was this morning or yesterday, that was like, I need to find a way to slip this into everything I ever shoot for the rest of the year. This is actually like so pretty. And it's just, you know, layers and layers of depth. You know, somebody at the end of the hallway on the right.
Just, in the doorway. Yeah, it's just so good.
And this, like, there aren't any moments that I'm sitting there and going like, wow. Besides the first shot and the last shot of like the at the grave. Yep. There is just something so serene about
there are two more for me that stand out in that, like, or I guess to one is the iconic master shot to me, or is iconic to me, of the master shot of the "We All Have It Coming" kid, like where it's like you just see, because also to your point, what are Westerns typically? It's high desert, it's this stuff here. When in reality, the frontier, if you go to Arizona, you go to Utah, you go to Colorado, you go to all of these places that the West is what it typically is known for, like this kind of Western area. There's a lot of mountains. There's a lot of woods. There's a lot of crazy stuff. And I think that when you see it in this movie, I mean, you see it with the winter, which apparently this was an accident. They filmed it in Canada. They filmed it in like Alberta, Canada, or something like that. And they filmed it up there, and the snow was not intentional, but it snowed overnight. And they were like, well, we'll use it. And they go and they just did it. But to me, it reflected so much more of a deeper truth of the whole thing, of being like, okay, he was out cold for a couple of months. Like, this was not a short time. This was like, but then also to that end, it showed like a different side of the Western. We're not used to seeing snow in a Western. You think Western, you think hot.
Yeah.
You think, and that's also like the landscape of that shot, right? Like that, and to your point of like, this film is not showy. It's competent, but not showy.
Yeah.
It's
beautiful.
very, it kind of reminds me very Roger Deakins.
Yeah.
Right. Like Roger Deakins, like stuff, aside from stuff like Blade Runner and like 19, what is it? 1912. What is the, like the World War I movie?
1947, 1941, 1912.
12. Yeah. Yeah. Like, but 1912, like Roger Deakins just kind of treats the subject matter with just a respect of like, it's just here, right? Like it just exists. It's just, and it's just competently made. Like, but it comes down to the ending for me. It's that everything from the "we all have it coming" kid scene, which is very simple shot selection. It's like 3 to 4 different angles, but they're all just so solidly composed that they just mean so much to me. And then one of my favorites, which is, it's like it's everything in the ending. I'll get to because the ending is truly one of my favorite endings in all of cinema.
I do love the shot of him creeping into the saloon there at the end.
Yes, that
one
is
used for the thumbnail.
Yes. Well, that one was one I was going to mention. The other one is when he exits and it's raining and he's calling out to them. And then in the background is the American flag. And it's just because I think that it was Clint Eastwood saying, yeah, this is what your heroes, your outlaws that you're kind of calling, this is what they were. This is what your American myth on a horse, this is what it was. This is also, not
like, this is how they were viewed. You know, that moment with is it Ted, Morgan Freeman's character? Ned. Where it's like, this is what happens to assassins. And it's just in the coffin on display with the fire. I was like, and also that kind of like unceremonious, like I was expecting we're going to find out they're holding him captive and we have to go and get him. And it's just, it's not
he dies off screen.
Yeah. And it's, you know, that's just something that wouldn't have happened in the Man with No Name trilogy. You know, like,
no,
it wouldn't go down like that.
Well, and that's also to your point, like what I also love about Unforgiven is it has a lot of Shakespearean nature to it, where Shakespeare does a lot of like, and when I mean Shakespearean, not just in being like, oh, it's a well-written thing. I'm like, no, if you really read Shakespeare, if you really understand what Shakespeare does a lot of shit where he plays with how characters come in and out of the story. Like how does this character die? When does they die? When do they die?
When does they die?
And like, when does they die? And like, how does that affect? Like, you look at Hamlet, you look at some of these other ones, like Othello is one of my favorites with regards to how it plays out, because there's like plans upon plans of getting people into place, and then the wrong people die, but at the right time. And like, and it's like, it's just this moment of insane circumstance. And that's the thing with Ned, right? Because Ned gets cold feet and he's one of the few people that decides, I'm not going to fucking do this, and tries to go home. And he's the guy that gets killed.
Can I ask, do you think that it's directly driven by, I'm not going to do this? Or do you feel like there's a I can't do this element to it?
I think it's I can't. I think it's more I think it's kind of, I don't know, I was watching a video that was talking about this where it's like Clint Eastwood the whole time is saying, I'm not that guy anymore. I'm not that guy anymore. Like, but
it is interesting, you know, when it comes down to the moment, there isn't a lot of questioning. He gets it done.
He can do it. Like, I think that's the difference between him and Ned is I think Ned did a lot more of putting this behind him. Like, I think Ned is the person that kind of, it's like when you heal and you get to a really good place, and then someone that you knew from a long time ago comes back into your life and you're like, okay, I'm better at handling this. But then you get into a situation that's very reminiscent of what you used to do. And you're like, nah, man, I know myself too well. I can't do this.
Yeah.
I can't do this.
It aligns also too with especially in that scenario where somebody has a view of you as well, and what they expect you to do and how they expect you to handle it. They treat you the way they know you, not the person you are now.
Yeah. And so yeah, like I don't know. And what's your take on Ned? What's your take on all that aspect? Because I am curious how that character played into the story.
Well, Morgan Freeman puts on an incredible performance.
Incredible.
I did not expect to see him in this film, so that was a nice little surprise. But also, yeah, there's this, like, I feel like there is an element of, I feel like Clint Eastwood found it easy to put all of the past behind him when he had a North Star. But he's gone so long without a North Star that even like Ned, for example, wouldn't have been the guy guiding him to the light. You know, these are two guys that were doing the same thing. So I think even being around that space, like, this is my partner, this is who I do this with, they kind of corrupt one another. And so I feel like when Munny has lost that and he's still trying to make ends meet and trying to be a farmer, you know, I guess if she was there and the kid showed up and was like, hey, we're going to go and kill these people, he would have been like, nah. But in the moment, she's not here to, like, I guess, talk to you in the way that you need. You know, like, yes, you've learned a lot and you've changed a lot through your experience with this person. But when they're no longer here, you revert back a little bit. You know?
Well, and it's also so interesting because, like, and this is what I love about
it's
how
a comfort in a situation. Yeah, it's like you go back to someone you knew previously, you're going to become a version of yourself.
Totally.
You go back to not having someone, same deal.
No, for sure. But and even to the extent of the circumstances that lead him to even experiencing that at all, right? Like, his whole thing is he looks at it and goes, you know, again, here he is. We were talking about the hogs earlier. You're finding out the hogs have the fever. He has 2 kids. They're not 2 teens. They're like at max 12. Like, you know, like maybe. And it's like they're out in the middle of nowhere. Like, they're out like in this, like, what is he gonna do? You know, and it's and
he just left the kids.
And he just has to leave them. Like, and I mean, and again, that's not entirely odd for that time period in history, but it still is one of those things where it's like he has to go and do this thing to get some money to be able to do this. It's again the kind of one last job kind of mentality. But at the same time, as you're saying, like, but it's like, again, and also it's like, okay, it sounds like it's going to be a morally righteous killing. It's not just killing for killing's sake. These people cut up these women, and again, as you said, it's also kind of a semi-comedic beat when it's like, oh, you're hearing him now tell the story, when again, we're the ones with the like dramatic irony in this situation of, we know what happened and we know, it was horrible, it was bad. Also, side tangent, one of what I love about this film is also how it handles its female characters, how those characters all have agency, and I like that they are flawed. In addition, like that whole, one of my things, again, this is when we're talking about Shakespeare earlier, this is a very Shakespearean thing to do, is Shakespearean tragedies to me are often like a train crash. Like, it's something that you saw the thing get laid on the track, and this entire play is just for waiting until that thing collides. You know it's going to collide. You know this is going to happen. It's when. And it's about setting up very interesting things that happen along that journey until that moment that make you feel very complicated about how we got here. And one of my favorites is they set this whole thing in motion. And that's also just tone wise. I don't know if you felt this, but every time I watch this movie, it just feels from minute one, that first scene, it feels like a fuse is lit and you cannot stop it.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, this is happening.
Yeah, it's like you do know that at a certain point, something's going to happen. He's going to take that drink and he's going to be another man.
It's not, and we're going to get there, but that's exactly it. Like, it's this long drawn, like, it's the best slow burn like I've seen in a film that does a great job at like leading you and edging you to that point. But the thing is that, but with these women, one of my favorite scenes is when the guys come back with the horses and they give her the best one. They're like, this one's not for him. This one's not for this. This is the best. It's better than any of the shit we're giving him. I'm giving it to you because it was wrong what we did, and I'm sorry. And it's the kid. It's the guy that didn't cut her up.
Yeah.
It's the guy who just was there.
Yeah, and he's dying for his friends, like
from first sense. And I also love that they kill him first in the movie. It's not the guy who did it that they kill first. It's him. And again, you just hear him pathetically doing the "I'm bleeding, Slim. Slim, can I get some water?" And just also great tiny performance from Clint Eastwood with his. And I want to know what your thoughts were on this, where he's doing the one thing of you see the two of them, like, and Clint Eastwood's like grabbing some of the gravel, and it's like just trying to do anything to distract himself from it. It's just so subtle, but he picks up like the gravel and he's just like chucks it. It's
give him some water, damn it. We're not going to shoot you.
Yeah, and then but it's also just his voice cracks a little bit when he does it. Like, it's like he didn't expect to say it. And he's like, and they're like, huh? Give him some water, damn it. We're not going to shoot. Like,
I think
it's just, tell me. I want to know your thoughts on that whole shit.
That scene as well, I think, is very indicative of what little Billy was saying earlier too. That like when you see how rattled these guys are shooting back at them, obviously these guys that have been around for a while, they're a bit more composed at the top, taking the shots.
Yeah.
Even when Ted kind of can't take the final shot, it's like there still is, it's there, but there is that moment.
They're calm.
My leg's broken. I'm crawling away, and
yeah,
they're literally like manic almost. The guys in the bottom, like, oh, we're gonna shoot him. You're gonna get him.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of that, which I found really, really interesting in that scene.
Yeah, well, and to your point, like, they're not even hitting anything.
Yeah.
They're not even, they're like, those guys aren't even coming close.
Yeah.
To there. And I think that just, it gets exemplified in the final scene. But like, to me, and I want to know your thoughts on this, but one of my favorite things about when they bring the horses, right, is they're about to give the horses. And she is about to accept a horse. And it's the others that deny it on her behalf. They talk about it on top. They're like, what? Oh, you're going to bring her a pony and that's going to solve everything? And that's going to be like, she doesn't speak for herself. She doesn't have this. It's these other people that come in. And you can argue, like, what I like about this film is I don't think anybody's right. I think that it's wrong that it happened.
I think
I don't think Little Bill's solution was the solution. But I don't think that them going and hiring assassins was also the solution,
one might say that like every character in the film is in some way unforgiven. Like it is. I know it's obviously the nail's right on the head there, right? But I was thinking about it before. I was just like, think about everything, even down to like Little Billy's last moments, where it's like, I don't deserve this. Like I built a house. It's like in thinking that, it's like, okay, like that doesn't get rid of your actions, but what he's really trying to say is like, this isn't how it was supposed to go. Like this part of the world is over. And even when you think about how he runs his town with no guns, like, yes, he runs it with an iron fist, right? And he's like, I'm going to take your guns by force. And that's, arguably there could be a right or wrong way to do this. We're not going to have any drama in this town. But the fact that he's like, I don't want bloodshed. I've seen enough of it. I'm going to control the town so I don't have to see that. And then, half the town is wiped out in bloodshed is like him saying, it wasn't meant to be like this. And I think that line by Gene Hackman too, of like, I don't deserve this. I built a house. It's so
simple, but it's so good. It's like, it's just, again, there's a reason this script is so solid, right? Like it's that line of, and also it's just, again, you don't have lines like this in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. You don't have a line of, I was building a house. You are getting empathy for the fucking villain in this moment, in this guy that we should be hating with our guts. And even then, you can't really blame the guy. Like the guy, like he's scary, but as you said, he is trying to run this town with an iron fist. We see the people that come through. We see the English Bobs. We see the thing like this, and we see all this moment. And which also one of my favorite scenes is when I don't know, this scene is also just very funny of them when they're loading the guns and telling about the guys that like are coming into town, and it's just this wonderful, just like little vignette scene of I was like the guys being like, I just loaded that. I just noticed the guy's like, he's like, oh, he's building a house. It's like, he's a shit carpenter. And it's like, did you say Little Bill was scared? And he says, Nope. I said he was a shit carpenter. And
And
that's
then
it's
later in
just
the
like
film,
a
it's
badass line.
later in the film, you've got the rain leaking through the house, and the crazy thing
Oh,
is when you see it, it looks good. Like the first look at the house is like,
yeah.
damn, he built his own house, awesome. And then it's like, oh no,
Yeah,
he
what a
sucks.
yeah, no, it's just such a tiny detail, but also again, it is very much the time period too. But it's just such a funny thing. I also love that moment where the author goes, like, you should hang the carpenter, and he goes, what?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's like, huh? Okay, I thought we were having a fun time.
Yeah. It is
but
it was to the previous point as well. I feel like it's also interesting to look at how where all the characters end up in the film. As you were saying, like there's a level of these women aren't going to forgive these guys for what they did to their friend. But you also have down to like Ned's wife and how she views money.
oh
And then I
yeah,
think the kid killing someone and then deciding, I'm never going to forgive myself. I'm never going to do that again. Like I'm never
yeah,
touching a gun again. It's like that. It's a very all quiet on the Western Front.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
It's that. And to your end, one thing, but one view that I think doesn't change. And here's what's so interesting to me is the one character that I don't think his view changes at all, although it should, is the author.
Yeah.
Which also, what a character to include in this thing.
Yeah. Which does kind of take us into the next topic we want to talk about a lot, which is how, it presents like a certain view based on our expectations. And I think it's interesting, the author too, because as you said, his doesn't change. And I feel like to a certain extent, the viewer doesn't change the end too. I kind of look at it and I just like, awesome. That's a really cool like take on this kind of story. And then just now I've added 3 more like old fashioned, bombastic westerns to my list that I want to go and watch afterwards. I still want that. I still love that. I want my popcorn,
Yeah, and you can have your cake and eat it too, sort of situation. But to your end, and I want to know your experience with the author character, because that was always a thing that stuck out to me. Also, one of the dumbest but funniest running bits in the entire thing that I love, which is just anytime they talk about the author, and it's like, oh, I'm a writer, like letters and such. I don't know why. There's just such a funny thing of them always saying like letters and such. And it's just so funny to me.
It's so absurd that you would be a writer as a profession.
Yeah, like, but it's more just the fact that like every character, like, and then my favorite thing is the fact that the third, it's again, it's the rule of threes, right? You have it like the beginning where it's like letters and such, and then you have like another one where it's like, like I'm an author, I'm a writer, like letters and such, and then he's going and then you get at the end of the movie when they're in the middle of the fucking battle, and then he goes, an author, and here he is reloading a rifle. And he's just like, he just killed people. He's just like, writer, like letters and such. I don't know why. It makes me laugh a lot of just that moment of just being like, again, just the fact that it's still out of this just happened, and that's still the conversation we're having.
Yeah,
like,
I did love also in that scene where he tells the writer, pick up that rifle. He's like unarmed, and he goes, pick up that rifle. And I was expecting that he would pick it up and he'd be like, you're armed now, boom, and just blow him away. That's what I thought that scene was gonna go. Yeah,
me too. Like every time I watch that, it's like that thing of I'm unarmed and him saying pick it up. At first I always think I know where it's going. Every time. But to your point, and I want to know with your point of view on the author, because the more I've watched this movie, the more I see it and the more I understand it, or at least I feel like I get my interpretation of the movie. I think that the fact that they start with this character that's this guy who's talking to English Bob and being like, oh, I'm doing this whole thing about the which, by the way, in Red Dead there is a reference to this character, and there is a whole subplot that like a side quest that you can do in Red Dead that kind of is loosely inspired by this where you are going and getting pictures of these old gunslingers.
I think I've seen some YouTube shorts on this.
Yeah, and you're finding out that none of them really live up to the hype that they were. And it's kind of all a reference to this character in Unforgiven. Basically, what I love about this character is this moment of, here he is. And I told you what I think he represents, which is I think he kind of represents a little bit of the American the American audience when it comes to a Western. It's honestly what he kind of represents Clint Eastwood's audience going
He's
into the movie.
It all up, you know, like
between him and the kid, I think that they're the two that kind of represent this bombastic energy about the whole thing. What do you think? What do you think?
Well,
but I want to know
really
your interpretation.
As well, that him being a writer, I feel like there are moments in which he tries to take the story into his own hands.
Yeah.
And realizes that it's not as simple as, you know, you might just write it as fiction. Like there's that moment where little Bill is telling him, take the gun and shoot me. And he can't do it. And then there's almost like this glimmer in his eye where he's like, well, what if I gave it to him? And Bill's like, do it. He's like, what? He's like, give it to him. Almost like egging him on, like, let's make this a story worth telling, you know?
Yeah.
And the way he kind of moves over and he almost becomes like so like introverted, and he's like handing it over, like, what is gonna happen? Am I gonna get shot? Have I just played exactly into what he wanted? Even now, it's, you know, is it loaded? Blah blah. And it's like, no, it's fully loaded. It's such a badass move by Gene Hackman. And
him just
too,
having
he
just the drop in the canisters. Yeah, I love it.
Like he thinks he knows better than the guys who lived it, you know, because I think that he's also.
Yep.
It's not only him being us and the audience like watching it, but everyone in this story is telling us what this actually is. You know, like they are coming and going, hey, you need to understand that the way that you have watched and heard and read these stories up until now is not the truth of how it went. You know, if you want the real story of the man with no name, it's probably pretty different, you know? Yeah. And you get little Bill telling you that as well. And I love also how this author is just consuming everything, you know, like he quickly just discards English Bob the second that he gets the chance and goes on to little Bill. And then when little Bill's done, he kind of goes straight back to Munny and he's like, who did you shoot first? Because little Bill told me that you got to shoot the most dangerous one first. So who's the most dangerous person in the room? Why did you shoot them first? Like, give me what's happening? And then, you know, he's literally coming up with the lines on the spot and being like, you know, he was surrounded by everybody and he was unstoppable and he was going to die. But instead, he unloaded his weapons into, and it's like, get out, man. Like, do you not see? It's a little bit actually indicative of what I find is happening in the world, like right now. When we look at the absurdity of stuff. And I mean, like Kendrick Lamar's performance at the Super Bowl, like I'm done. Yeah. Not to say that I am like I've been watching and trying to learn a lot more about this performance because I'm not involved in that side of music too much. It's not my style of music.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, so I was like appreciating it and then seeing other creators talk about the depth and layers to this performance and what it meant. And I was just like, yeah, it is a bit of like, it's like they're telling us in the film, open your eyes to what's happening here, and this guy can't.
Yeah, and what I love, even in the very end, he pushes through the two guys who are about to debating if they should shoot William Munny because they have a shot, but they're like, but again, it's that if you miss, yeah, and then he pushes through them, and he just wants to see him. And that's what I think that Clint Eastwood is, that feeling of like, I don't know if that's exactly what he was intending. I don't know if this is success, but my interpretation is the film is kind of talking and commenting on the voyeurism that we want this to have. We want this to be a simple story. We want this to be a simple story of good versus evil. Yeah. We want this to be something where it has a moral and has a hero at the end and has a thing there, but it's not. And we're the ones that are the joke at the end. Like, not that Clint Eastwood saying that we're a joke, but it's that thing of being like, of being people that want something so simple, want a story. Not that we want a story so simple, I guess. It's more of a, that we're willing to believe that the story was this simple. And that it's like, that it is this thing. And then you're watching, because again, like I heard somebody describe it perfectly. It's like, he doesn't ride into the sunset. He saunters into the darkest of night. It is the exact opposite of what we're used to, you know, like that's what this is. And that's like, and I think that the kid also represents this, but the kid kind of represents probably a little bit more what Clint Eastwood kind of probably feels is being like, oh, I went through this, and the more I've thought about it and the more I've learned about it, the more I've done it, it's like, this is horrible what these people did. This is bad. This is not good. This is not what this was. And I think that, to me, we get to the I do you want to transition into the ending? Because I think this is the key. So for me, the reason I wanted to do this movie with you was to talk about these last two scenes of this movie, because I think it is some of the finest filmmaking. I have brought it up in directing classes. I have used it and analyzed it to no end. I think this is peak
cinema.
But honestly, like I will die. Like if I had a hall of scenes that like I think are the best scenes that I've ever seen, I think these two would be towards the end of the hallway, like at like prized places. This is up there for me with Samwise's speech in the Two Towers, which I think is the greatest cinematic scene I've ever seen. It's up there with the hug at the end of Everything Everywhere. It's like, it is the girl in the red dress and Schindler's, like it is up there with these moments for me. And it was very special to share it with you, because this is something that changed me as a filmmaker, being like, I want to do that all the time. I want to have something like this, because I love, I cannot watch, whenever I get to the scene, I cannot watch it once. I have to watch it at least like 10 times before I finish the movie, because I'm just analyzing every cut, every tiny minuscule muscle on an actor's face moving. And I love that it starts off with, they kill the guy and they ride out, and then it's the we all got to come in scene, which I think is, you're talking about the layers upon layers in the writing. Starting off, him being like, I blasted him away, but we can hear a little bit in his voice. And also I think it's funny because like, he was taking a and then as soon as he says the taking a shit, then you're like, oh. Like, I think this film is always one of those movies of, if you don't know where it's going, and I'm curious to know with you, did you know anything about this ending? Had you know anything?
Nothing.
Because I knew a little bit about this ending when I saw it the first time. So I want you to, I'm going to pause. I want to know you going into this ending, between that scene onwards, your thoughts, raw. What was your experience? What was going into it? Where did you think it was heading?
I think one of the things was really interesting was watching, particularly the whole film, he stays on this, like, I don't drink anymore. Like, I'm not a person. And it's actually quite subtle, him taking a big swig from the bottle when he realizes Ned is gone. Like, it's actually not a big, like, oh, we have to go and do it. I need my liquid courage. I've got this.
Yep.
It's just like, where are you going? Okay, cool. You're not going. I need your gun. Where are you going? Okay, you leave. Yep.
Yep.
It's just like, and you kind of do get that almost like John Wick moment of like, shit is gonna go down.
Go down.
But then on top of that, in terms of keeping it real, you do have the reminder of, oh, I remember there being 3 people that you gunned down. So you know that he's good in a fight against 3 people. But then you also have the context of earlier in the film, him shooting with a handgun and missing every single time. And so all these little bits and pieces that tell you, like, are we setting him up to fail? Is that what's happening here? Like, what is actually going to transpire? And what is still haunting me now to this very minute is the walk past the coffin. I was like, please don't be in there. You know, when they said, oh, they've put him outside with a sign on him, I thought, like, I don't know, he'd just be like on the ground and they would just hit something on there.
Yeah.
But like, he's in a coffin, fire either side, and trapped with like a wooden sign. It's actually disgusting.
Yeah.
And I think
it
there's
makes
also
you
that
feel
moment too,
so gross.
For a moment, I was like, why is he shooting Skinny? Like, he was kind of helping Skinny out by helping the girls, you know? But there's a moment of like, who does this place belong to? Because even if it's if it's his goddamn decision to put my friend out on display, it's your place and you let it happen. You told me you bought this place for $1,000 and it belongs to you. Therefore, it's your decision. So you are about to, you know, another theme of the film is consequences. Yeah, it's all about consequences. yeah, it's
Well, and it also shows, in my opinion, I think it's a moment also proving the audience once and for all, this is not a good guy. The guy that you've been watching this entire time, and then he goes on to say as much in his next couple lines
of women and children and everything that's Walter called.
My fucking
Brilliant
favorite lines of just going that's right. I've killed women and children. I've killed everything that walked or crawled at one point and another. And I'm here to kill you, little Bill. For what, just the chills, the absolute but not in a, oh, badass. It's it's the reaction that the girls have, which is the, huh? Excuse, no, what?
This from the nice man who cared about his wife so much that didn't want to sleep with me because he was such a genuine. But it's another line earlier in the film too, where Delilah is saying that, and she's like, he was so lovely, he's so honest and true to his wife. And the other lady, I think it was Anna, who sees
he
right
ain't
through him.
He ain't got no wife.
He ain't got a wife. No one's above ground.
Yep.
She's right on the money.
He said the William money, but
but it is I loved also, because as we said, we've also set up having somebody shoot back at you is going to have you unsettled. This whole concept that every person that is in this shootout, there's nobody in the room that is calm about this. Obviously, Munny is, right? I think Bill is to a certain extent, but he's
also the first that goes down.
Bill plays it really well. I think Gene Hackman's masterful performance is showing somebody who is pretending to not be scared.
Yeah.
And Munny is not scared. He's ready to die if he's going to die, but he knows what he needs to do. Every other shot, every other insert we get is someone holding a gun being like,
oh, well, yeah, I was going to mention that. I think that the reason this film won for editing is almost this fucking scene. It's just I think that the film editing up to this point has been impeccable, incredible. The shot selection just wonderful.
Yep.
But this scene is where it really shines because I've analyzed it again, cut for cut. And one of my favorite moments is when you see it's literally he goes, misfire, kill the son of a bitch. It's not everybody draws guns. The first shot is everybody runs away. Everybody ducks. Everybody pauses. And I'm like, that is not a Western. That is not what Sergio Leone was doing. Nobody did that. Clint Eastwood went for the authentic thing, which would be if I saw somebody pull out a gun, as much as I want to be the hero, I would probably run behind something.
Yeah.
That's what it is, right?
It is interesting too that I'm just looking through Joel Cox's previous works as an editor. And I can see that he's edited a bunch of Westerns as well, including Pale Rider, which was starring Clint Eastwood.
Yeah. Which was the one right before this movie, which was the one that came out right before.
But are you familiar with any of the other things that he may have edited?
I'm just pulling him. Oh, well, he went on. Well,
you see it now, yeah?
Yep, I see it now.
Yeah, so you have Mystic River in there, $1 Million Baby, Space Cowboys.
Honestly, pretty much every one of Clint Eastwood's movies. Let me see if, hold on.
Gran Torino.
I think he started probably with Pale Rider with him and then going in.
But even Denis got him in Prisoners.
He pretty much did everything afterwards.
Yeah, he's Clint Eastwood's editor. You can see here, American Sniper. Even down to last year, he did Juror 2.
Yep. This as soon as they started working together, it's this is his man. This is his boy. And that's how it tends to be with, at least I know it in my experience as well, but in generally, when I look at a lot of directors, the minute they find an editor, the editor is their ride or dies. I know that actually Peter Jackson saved his editor for his typical editor for his previous films. He saved it for Return of the King, because he knew that was going to be the one where he was going to have the hardest time. Yeah. So he had his actual editor that had worked on his previous work over there. But anyway,
I did see another one that was on my list was Space Cowboys to watch, which is another Clint Eastwood film, which I heard is quite good too.
Yeah, I haven't seen that one, so we should watch that together.
No.
But I've heard. But
his ending is fantastic.
This ending is great, man. Like, but what I love is that whole line of, again, yeah, as you're saying, like, here he comes in, and what I love is, again, also talking about back to the music. The music when you're approaching that coffin is unsettling. It is a horror movie. It is not heroic. It's nothing. This is dark. It's scary. It's evil. And then you get into the moment of, as even just again, I own this establishment, as you said, and it's him. Just well, also again, this was, I believe, Clint Eastwood's first ever nomination for a leading actor. This is the first time he was ever nominated as an actor. I think he'd been nominated as a like director and things like that before. Let me just do my quick research on that to double check. Yeah, because he's won 4 Oscars now. But for a while he was never. Yeah, this was the first time he was ever nominated for anything. Was this movie, and he was nominated for Best Director, Best Actor, and Best Picture, obviously, in which 2 of which he won. And then he would go on to win again for $1 Million Baby, which again, wonderful movie. But the one that Morgan Freeman finally got his Oscar for. But with this movie, like, I think with Clint Eastwood in this movie from an actor's perspective, this is one of those scenes where he really shows off those acting chops. Because yeah, just that like stare that he gives when it's just because also to your point about the alcohol stuff, that was one of my favorite details, was the fact that it's such a subtle sip, because then that's just the audience. Again, we've been talking about it long enough that the minute you start seeing it, you're like, oh no. Oh
like,
no.
That moment is John Wick with the sledgehammer.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
That's what he's up to. The entire movie up until then has been John Wick concreting over.
Yes.
You know? And
yes.
up until this point, it's like, you're gonna make me break this. You're going to make, and I love his performance too when he hears that Ned's dead. He's like, nope, Ned is south. Ned is south. He's looking after my kids. He's gone. He's gone. He's not dead. They're like, no, they were whipping him.
He's dead.
And he just died.
And I love, as you said, it is that moment of where you see it in his eyes. And I even love the kid's reaction. And I love that William Munny can see it in the kid's eyes, where he's like, you can take all the money. Will, I don't want anything to do with this. I don't want anything to do with it ever again. He goes, don't worry, kid. I ain't going to kill you. And it's like, you can tell that's like, he was able to cut through the bullshit, just be able to be like, and I love the line of, you're the only friend I got.
Yeah.
And it's just,
I think there's something really interesting about that scene as well, because I feel like there's also something that William Munny has to teach the kid, which is you don't actually get to just walk away from this. Like, you are going to remember this for a long time, and you don't get to just like wash your hands of it and be like, oh, I did a good thing and like killed someone to like help a lady. You did this for money, and you're going to remember that you did this for money. It is, again, coming back to like a Breaking Bad parallel. Do you remember season 5? I think it's episode 9, first one of season 5, part 2, the blood money episode of Jesse being like, why do I have this money? Like, you don't get to just get rid of it. Like, you will reap the consequences of your actions. You will feel the fact that you took a man's life for the rest of your life.
Well, and that's again, as you're saying, like, one of my favorite moments in the whole thing is, as you said, like that line that he says, where it's like, what, like, it's a hell of a thing killing a man. You take all he's got and all he's ever gonna have. Yeah. And it's like, and it's one, just another banger of a line.
There's 2 others that stand out to me as well. I wasn't sure if you finished on that point though.
No, please. I want to hear you say. I think we're going to say the same thing.
The one we used in the intro, which was coming anyway. We all do, kid. It's and the last one is, you know, around the same time that little Billy is like, I don't deserve this. I built a house, and he's like,
deserves got nothing to do with it.
It deserves got nothing to do with it, and then it's like, all right, I'll see you in hell. Yep.
That to me still remains to be. I don't know how Clint Eastwood just conveys so much with that. Just Just like, because again, it's not your Western. It's not this. It's not what, like, that's why I again, and I want to know, and I also want to like kind of round back around to the journey that I took you on. Are you like, because I guess my point is this: the reason I want to take it is because I'm like, that's not what they did. It's easy to think that they did shit like this, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
They weren't doing this. Like, no one was having this moment where Clint Eastwood honestly is saying, yeah, I'm going to be damned for the life I lived, and I have to be okay with that. I have to move forward in whatever realm that means, knowing that that's a thing, you know? And I'm like, what a fucking movie that does that.
I mean, and to tie it into something that we constantly talk about on this podcast, like it's like watching things like this and seeing where things like Star Wars take inspiration.
Yeah.
It makes me then look back on the inspired work a little more critically too. Like, I'm watching this and I'm going, this is what Book of Boba Fett needed to be.
Yep.
Like, it needed to be that I'm trying to move on and not be that guy. And they tried, and it doesn't work. They didn't go far enough. They didn't commit to the bit enough, you know?
Yeah.
Where he is entirely invested in still reminding you that, like, these aren't different people. A person who has changed has the capacity to revert that change. They're not different people. And you don't get to pretend that stuff didn't happen and you're better. You know, and I think it's, you know, Book of Boba Fett, something that kind of falls short a little bit. It's like, you know, I'm the dime, you know, I'm going to be better than they used to be. Like, it's like, okay, but like, what about everything that came before? Like, you've done a lot of damage here. Like, you don't just get to show up and be like, I'm going to make it better.
For sure. Exactly.
Like,
and to your end, it is that you are damned. And I think that, as you're saying, like, it's a thing of going, few films, I think, have the guts, and few pieces of media, I think, have the guts to go where this goes. I think that you can, honestly, again, I think that for me, the ones that nail what I think Unforgiven really did nail is Last of Us. I'm like, Last of Us is one of the few things that I go, even like Logan, I'm like, I like Logan, but I don't think it quite goes where Unforgiven does. Like, and not that it needs to, right? Like, it's just clearly an inspiration. It doesn't have to be like beat for beat. But Last of Us is the only other thing that I think I have seen personally that has done the thing of, our character's wrong. Like, and again, you can deal with however you feel about the decision.
Yeah. But the decision happened.
The decision happened. And that's the thing. Like, it's the choice that has been, again, it's that back to the metaphor of what I feel is film. It's like, it is the train crash.
Yeah.
The train crash is coming. I don't care how much you like the train. I don't care how much you like the people on the train. But decisions were made.
Yeah,
that got to this crash.
Yeah, and I think, again,
it doesn't matter how pretty the train was. Like, you know,
I think tying it also again back into like Breaking Bad, it is that moment of like, you know, we're gonna back this person into a corner. There's no way out of this.
Breaking Bad's another good example.
Like, it does that so well. And Zane's joined us in chat as well. So hey, Zane, and come at the perfect time too, because I'm sure that this point will make sense to you. But again, it's like looking at characters' decisions of everything they've done up to this point, not just to. Like, again, not just within this film, but how those decisions have been presented in previous films. You know, and how does that inform this character? Because this isn't the man with no name, but it kind of is. You know, like, this could be him a little bit later.
This could have been him later on in life, or the real man with no name.
That's it, right? And I think it can be a little bit shocking almost going into a film like this, where you go, like, I knew what this was, and now you're telling me that what it was something different. You know, and other films that do that really well. The Last Jedi, you get that with Luke and how he, like, how his decisions from the previous films are portrayed in The Last Jedi. And then again, it's also got to do with consequences and decisions and bad decisions that he's made over the years.
I hate that I agree with you. It's
you know,
like, I hate that you got here.
But like, think about the layers here, right? Like, it is a Rashomon style storytelling, which is by Akira Kurosawa, who also made Yojimbo, which started, you know, inspired Sergio Leone to do Fistful of Dollars. Like, there is so much to this onion. this glass onion, if you will.
This glass fucking onion.
Yeah.
I
But it's
hate it here.
It was a fantastic recommendation, dude. I loved this film.
I'm glad you did, man. Like, and the last point I'll have on it, because I think it's more appropriate to kind of like where we're at now, at least in America and in our political sphere and things there, where, you know, I think when people are afraid to go back and learn about the history that we've been a part of and to learn about what not to it's a part in the reference, but the good, the bad, and the ugly of what we have been. And I think that this film does a good job at understanding none of these people are one thing. None of these people are like a monolith of like, it's not one archetype, right? Like, it's not a battle of good and evil. It is a deep, not dangerous conversation. It's a deep, complicated conversation that you can't really sum up in a word.
Yeah, I guess
you can't. Like all these characters had
the good, the bad, the ugly.
Yeah, exactly. Like you have the three, and the thing is, if we're unwilling to listen, if we're unwilling to learn and to think about this shit, we'll never grow. We cannot change if we can't admit, like, that's the thing about William Munny's character, that for all his flaws and all his ilk, he never denies that he did those things.
Yeah.
He never says that I didn't do those things. He just says, I'm a changed person.
Yeah.
Now, he makes decisions that revert those. But as you said, it's not reversion. You're choosing again. You're choosing to go back to this person. And I think he would admit that, yeah, in that moment I did. And I got to live with that. And I think that that's kind of what we in this world, what I take away from this movie is this kind of perpetual cycle of violence that occurs, and this idea that you'll never be satisfied. Like, you walk away from the movie, and I always am shocked when that last panel comes up again. And I love the text in there of eventually, like, they had moved. Some say to Santa Fe, some say to this place, but
he lived a good life.
But well, no, the thing that what I love about it is like, but nothing on the headstone told her mother why her daughter married a ruthless outlaw. Like, and that's the key to this thing, is like, we don't know the answer to that. We don't know. There's parts of the story we'll never know the full answer to. And I don't know. That's why after all these years, after all this time and all the media that I've consumed since, this one is one that I think will always define, at least in my work, in what I strive to write and what we write together. It's especially when you come to genre storytelling. I think this is an essential story for people to watch and to consider, because it is so gray morality. It is the definition of, I think, this film is the reason we have Hell or High Waters. It's the reason we have True Grits. It's the reason that we have, like, Hell or High Water doesn't exist without this movie. And I think that to me is the key to Unforgiven. And so I want to know, you wrapping out your thoughts. I know you said great rec, but I want to know, just give me your NAF take on everything as a whole.
Yeah, like I said, I love that it takes everything you expect about a Western up to this point and throws it on its head. Yeah, and relivs it to you in a completely different stew than you sort of expected. I think that it's also very interesting to explore the perspective of, oh, my gunslinger was not a good guy, when, again, especially like Man with No Name trilogy, like in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, he's the good, you know, but it's like a lot of the decisions he makes are like questionable. You know, like, is he good, you know? Like, again, a lot of what happens in the first film from that trilogy is just him like egging on two people to try and, where am I going to get my money from? I'm going to get this guy, and he just gets two in over his head, and he's like, oh, I stuffed up. And at the end, it's coming back to kind of like, I want to fix things, you know, and he's just fixing the mess he made, you know?
Yeah. Well, and question for you, going on the journey that you've gone on in a very quick amount of time, but still, like, the journey of Westerns, how do you feel Unforgiven lands in, even in considering beyond like the ones that I just made you watch, but the ones that you had watched previously. I want to know kind of where your head's at now with a more comprehensive knowledge of Westerns. Do you think Unforgiven deserves the hype I've been giving it? Do you think that it is a thing that is like an honest snap thoughts? I'm curious.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it does deserve the hype, but it's a subtle hype, because I feel like if you're going into it, the expectation that it's gonna, like, for example, think about the first time you sat and watched Logan, right? And we're like, this is so different, and this is blowing my mind because like I didn't know that I wanted this version of this character kind of thing. I don't sit here and go, I needed this version of the man with no name. You know, it's not that kind of like holy shit revelation. It's more of a I am forced to contend and think about things that I wasn't going to previously. You know, in my popcorn film. Again, it's like The Last Jedi of it all a bit. You know, it's like people go to Star Wars for the fun bits and they don't want to think about stuff. Or they look at something like Andor as well, where you go like, hold on, you know, think like Marva's last scene. I just saw a clip of that like an hour ago, and they were talking about the current state of things. Yeah, and being like, you know, we're gonna sleep. We're all asleep, and it's time to wake up. And it's like, it's a very different kind of revelation that you have watching this film, you know. And again, comparing it to the sort of things like the cowboy and the western films were like your popcorn films of that era. You know, they were your MCU films, and like this isn't like Infinity War in that sense. You know, it's not like the culmination of everything we've watched now comes up until this, which Logan has as well. It's not everything comes to this. It's like this is the result of everything.
Yes, that's such a great way of putting it. Because again, we were talking about Good, the Bad, and the Ugly just a couple of minutes before filming it, being like, that is to me like the end game or Infinity War, being like,
that's the event.
This is the event movie. This is the like, oh my God, I'm having so much fun. As you said, it's like one of the best films ever made. Like one of the things that it's just impeccable. But then you look at this, and I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't blame somebody if they never, like, if they don't walk away with it with the same level of appreciation that I have.
It's a weird balance too, because it's one of those ones where you go like this is like I think a harder one to sit and watch like again on like multiple viewings through the whole thing than like a Good, Bad, and the Ugly. Like you're gonna sit and you're gonna have fun with Good, Bad, and the Ugly every time, and here you're gonna sit and like think and contemplate why these people are the way they are, and unpack more and more of those layers. So like you're going to put each one on at a different time. But I think that, like they both belong in the same space. Definitely.
It's why as again, I cannot recommend the takes.
It's an epilogue.
Talking about Unforgiven. Yeah, it's an epilogue, as you said. And that's a great way of saying it. It's what Nap and I were talking about a bit ago. And now I think the conversation will make more sense. But I'm like, Logan, I think, is so far the closest we've come to this with the kind of superhero genre, but I am waiting for when somebody does make a kind of Unforgiven to the superhero genre, because I think we're just kind of getting to that point where I think that there is Logan, again, I think was at the time the thing that I think has come close to what this did for Westerns.
Yeah. I think Winter Soldier's like almost there. We have a bit of like, you know, you were like Captain America and you were like the big, and it's like, that's not how this goes. You understand? Like you are a pawn for us to use. You're not like the guy, you know?
Yeah.
And they sort of start to, but I think that, when you are in the realm of like quite a big consistent narrative, you don't have as much freedom as you do with I want to tell my one story, which is, you know, that's what I want for like these franchises. That's what I want for my MCU. That's what I want for Star Wars. It's like I love the universe. I want more stories in the universe, and I want self-contained stories within the universe. You know, like
I
want a TV show about a priest taking confessions from people during the blip. You know, like I
think it's a great idea.
I'm waiting for the conversation of my wife disappeared, and I'm so happy, or my mom's gone, and I'm so happy, and I don't know how I'm supposed to feel about that. You know, like it's yeah, I don't know. Like, I think that there's just a lot more space for those kinds of stories, and that's what I want.
And so again, so also to just encourage all creators out there, man. Again, also just to say, just to remind all of my fellow artists out there, like Naf and I talking about this personally, I'm also very inspired that a reader for Clint Eastwood, 10 years prior to him actually reading this script, read it,
Hated it.
which means this script, in theory, existed for about 20 to 30 years before it ever got into the hands of, before it ended up on the Oscar stage.
Yeah.
I just want everybody to understand
The timeline.
the thing is, and also this idea of, like, as you just said, a reader hated it. A reader hated it, put it in a drawer, totally like because of that, Clint Eastwood didn't even take a look at it, didn't even have this moment until eventually he was being considered for another project, read it, and was like, "Where's this been?"
Yeah, I think that's
so
interesting
you
too,
could
right?
be,
It's like,
you could be right on the money this entire time.
yeah, I think it's interesting too because it's like the person who hated it was the person you needed to love it the most at the time too. And I
Yeah,
was like, oh, I needed that person to like it to give it to him, and that didn't happen. But as a result,
I've been on those,
this.
and I feel so bad. I will say I've been a reader for like a company, and I always try to approach it with again, you have your own viewpoint, but I'm like, again, you're in your 20s, your early 20s, you fucking don't know shit. And you're just reading this thing, and I'm like, I do feel bad for artists because I'm like, I'll eventually be sending my shit to these people, and I'm like, man,
You're gonna get calm.
like,
it's okay though. We're finalists right now, so
we're quarterfinalists, baby. But I mean, honestly, guys, like, just keep that in mind. Like, for any artists who are inspired by what we say, and for anyone that's trying with that, just remember Unforgiven sat in a drawer for 30 years, pretty much.
hell yeah.
And then it won Best Picture. So who won in the end?
Yeah.
And here we are, still talking about it. Exactly.
That's the real win.
Artist of Tapestry.
That's it,
But
baby.
let's move on, bud. Let's do it. I'm glad you loved it. I'm glad you loved it.
Let's jump into cinema a la carte. And for those who are new to this, we always love to wrap up our episodes with the game of cinema a la carte. And as a reminder, this is where we get to show you the best way to experience this film, and this is through the metaphor of food. So both of us have prepared a menu of our own for this week's film. We have the this week's film, Unforgiven, as the main course. And then we have an entree to start, a wine to pair, and a dessert to complete your journey. And you guys get to decide in the comments which set menu you love the most. So be sure to let us know. Now, Kate, do you want to go first, given this was your film?
Yes, I'm making some changes on the fly, so we're gonna see how this goes.
Go, then?
If you could, give me a moment because I'm cooking up something that I think.
Yeah. So the title for my set menu is "You got the wrong guy, bro." And we're gonna kick off with an entree of Bob Odenkirk's Nobody.
Ooh, fuck, that's a good choice.
Yeah, isn't it? Yeah. We're gonna start, a little bit soft, a little bit easy. You know, I love this concept of we're getting back into this. There is this person you do not know the backstory, and you're fucked with the wrong guy. It's a bit of a John Wick, but it feels like a little bit more of a realistic take on the John Wick. He kind of has his ass handed to him a lot, you know? Then we're gonna go into Unforgiven as our main course. We're gonna stay nice and somber. We're gonna pair that with a delicious, slow, what's the word? Like almost like a mulled wine, you know? Like you sip at this over a long period of time. And this is Nicolas Cage's Pig that came in, I believe, 2020 or 2019.
Okay, yeah.
My favorite Nicolas Cage film that I've seen. And it's very similar. You have a character who used to be somebody and is no longer that person, is being dragged back into a world. But it, I think, plays on the expectation a little more in the way that Unforgiven does, with where you expect these things to go. And there's the constant question of like, who is this guy? Like, what is about to happen right now? And it just goes in the most like stunning, like emotional direction that it could have gone. And it's beautiful. And we're gonna end our cinema a la carte with Viggo Mortensen's A History of Violence.
Oh, I've been meaning to see that so bad. Yeah,
it's a little bit more dessert because it's a little more like on the fun side. It's based on a graphic novel. When you watch the film was like a little silly. I watched it with my friend Aaron. We had a fantastic time with it. But it's a little more on the goofy side of it. But you do have, this guy who's just a family man, and everyone's like, I know you, you're that guy. And he's like, I'm not that guy, dude. Come on, like, chill. I'm just the guy working at the diner. Like, shut up. And they're like, no, I know you. You did this and this and this. And he's like, no, come on, man. This is my family. And then they start to fuck with his family. And he's like, okay, guys, I'm that guy. Okay, I'm that guy. But I did play with a couple of other ideas for this as well. Like another concept for my cinema a la carte was a deconstruct me daddy. And it was just going with, all right, what are these genres, these concepts that I can kind of pull apart and deliver back to you, you know? And there were things like Knives Out in there, which I thought was really cool. Obviously we had Unforgiven in there. I was playing with Pig or Nobody as well. But one of the ones that I kind of really liked having in there when I was exploring that direction was Past Lives.
Ooh, that is a really good one.
Right, because it does feel a little bit like we're dealing with like what kind of relationship people have with one another when both people are expecting somebody to be who they used to be. And you have the kid looking at Munny as, I need you to be the guy you used to be, and Munny looking at Ned going, I need you to be that guy so that I have the strength to be that guy, and Ned can't do it. And there is this kind of like a bitter, like sweet, but also just a bitter nature to the story where it's like, it hurts me that it didn't go the way I wanted it to go, And it's deconstructing that. In any other story, Past Lives would have ended a certain way. But by removing this is a rom-com and the husband's in the wrong, and actually putting that on its head and going, him saying in the film, I'm the bad guy here, I'm in the middle of your perfect love story, is such a consciously masterful decision.
Yeah, no, so that's wonderful. That's wonderful. I agree with you completely. And I
also,
think that makes it
dead. Sam Raimi's Western. Like, it's heaps of fun. Like, it is just fucking awesome.
Well said. Well said.
So hit me. What you got?
Yep. So, okay. So I have given mine, and I am calling it, It Can Be That Deep, Bro. And so this menu focuses on films that were almost defiantly deeper than people wanted them to go. Or films that maybe you might see on the surface as like, oh, it's a Western, or it's this, or it's that. So as an appetizer, we're going to start off with a film that I think you can watch just on its own, and it is perfectly fine. Dawn of the Planet of the Apes.
Fuck yeah.
Starting out with a great appetizer for something that gets you into questioning your own stuff about humanity and what is occurring there, and just all of those questions about what does it mean to be human? Do we deserve to live? What does it mean to trust another human being? At what point does fear take over? Followed up by Unforgiven. And then a wine to continue off of the theme of this can be more. We go into Skyfall. And going with a James Bond coming back after a bit of downtime when the world needs him most, but also going up against an agent that was a part of his group that is going against because of what he also has a problem with. I think is, again, it's showing that what Sam Mendes felt, which was, oh, this can be deeper. We can do an actual real story here.
Yeah.
And he felt this because of the dessert that I picked, which is The Dark Knight. I think that The Dark Knight was the first real superhero movie. Like, you can argue maybe it was Spider-Man 2, maybe it was X-Men 2, maybe it was some of these other ones. But The Dark Knight was at least
Spider-Man 3.
Fair enough. Absolutely. I think that you have a very valid point for doing so.
Just make sure we're still recording. Okay, we are on record. Spider-Man 3 is better than No Way Home. It is.
I mean, we're moving on. And so, because it's not that I disagree, it's that I don't know how I feel, that I'm torn. Anyway, But The Dark Knight, I think that nowadays with a lot of darker superhero movies and a lot of things like that, we're quicker to, I think, unfairly demonize The Dark Knight at times. Not demonize, but put it as a place of like, it did start a trend of people trying to do too gritty of superhero movies, and people didn't vibe with that, and that's fair.
It
but
made
at the
me
same,
look at interviews of somebody going, I want to do a what do they call it? Fuck, why can't I remember? The Grounded. I want to do a grounded.
yeah, grounded.
Like,
Grounded. It started to become. It started to use the term grounded a little too much. But The Dark Knight, in and of itself, started a conversation around superhero movies could be more. Popcorn movies could be more. And it made a thing of that. The reason the Academy does do 10 movies instead of 4, which it used to. A lot of people talk about that The Dark Knight was the reason that happened, because The Dark Knight was so close to getting a Best Picture nom, but because of the 5, like if they had like one more slot, it may have. And that's when the year after they had 10 categories, they had 10 slots.
Wow, that's cool.
And so so to go back over that one, it can be that deep, bro. With an appetizer, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, a main of Unforgiven, wine of Skyfall, dessert of The Dark Knight, and then if you want what I am calling Kay's Cuisine, which is if you want a guide to films that really affected me and changed my view on things as an artist, I think these films are the ones that did it. It's start off with Raiders of the Lost Ark. You got to go into Super 8, Unforgiven, No Country for, this is not going to be our typical 4, but if you want to kind of get a little bit of an order, No Country for Old Men, Me, Earl and the Dying Girl, Grand Budapest Hotel, Everything Everywhere, and Drive My Car. If you want to understand Kay's view on the world and how like stylistically it has evolved, that is the way to go.
Yeah.
And then if you really hate yourself, there's Schindler's List in there too. Like, but nonetheless, those are mine. Thank you all for going in here. It was incredible just to be able to be here with you all again. Zane, thank you for jumping in and having some fun here, but also for those who are listening afterwards, hope we do. But yeah, Naf, let's want to wrap out. Want to tell people what's coming up?
Absolutely, yes. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Once again, I'm Naf. You can find me at Seen by Naf or at the One with the Films socials. We're a little bit inactive on socials at the moment.
There's a reason for that, but we'll go over.
Yeah, but we'll touch on that over the next couple of weeks as well. However, as we were saying before, this is the last episode of the weekly watch list for season 3. So in a couple of weeks' time, we're going to be doing our breakdown of our top 10 for 2024. So both of us going through that individually and breaking down which films we love the most, which kind of surprises for us. We did a similar thing last year as well. That's going to take us into a couple of weeks later where we do the One with the Filmies, where all of the films that we've watched for the podcast this year will come together into our own version of the Oscars, which is much better. Sorry.
Oh,
much
more better.
So you guys should definitely hang out and come and see that too. But Kay, where can people find you?
Well, you can find me at Movie Man Opinions, anywhere you get your social medias.
Tell me to look towards the western sky. I thought that would.
You can look towards the western skies. And I literally blanked on the lyrics, and I'm sorry because I'm a bad theater person now.
You are.
And so, but nonetheless, we are so excited to be able to do this. But now, where can people find you?
I already said it.
I thought you already did. Man, never mind. That's my day.
You're crazy.
And
it is
so
like
there
10
we
p.m.
are.
for you anyway. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up, guys. You can find all the links to our individual pages in the descriptions below. And we'll see you in a couple of weeks for a new episode of One with the Films.
We love it. Love you guys.
See you later.
Thank you for tuning in.